Hello and welcome to another episode of CryptoTime. My name's James Coughlan and I'm joined with my usual co-host, Antonio Shillingford. How are you today, mate?
I'm doing rather fine. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. As always, looking forward to kicking into two very prominent subjects that have been propping up over news and media over the last 2 weeks or so. Specifically, I know you're going to be talking around the Genesis upgrade with BSV, which is going to be cool. And I'm going to be jumping into that same old subject we've been hammering into, which is the SEC and how they've been dealing with certain ICOs that have been cropping up across the last couple of years or so. And we're starting to see really it get to a head point now where we're seeing more and more information. So without further ado, let's kick straight into the episode. Ready?
Yep.
Good man. Happy for me to kick off? Cool.
Pave the way.
So, Opporty on SEC lawsuit. If we fail, it will affect the entire industry. That was the headline which we saw come out of CoinGeek.com. Followed up with, in the eyes of the US Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in most cases, an initial coin offering is synonymous with fraud. The financial regulator has gone on the offensive in the cryptocurrency space, calling out endless number of companies it asserts illegally offered securities to investors. So same thing that we've been harping on now for quite some time. And the reason obviously we're bringing this up is because it very much relates to what we've been speaking about with BSV. We know that BSV operates in a regulatory compliant setting, right? Which is something that's ultimately very important in the coming days that are coming to this crypto space, as we know it's going to become regulated. We always had a lot of issues with a lot of the ICOs that happened over that period, and the SEC quite clearly do as well. At the moment, just to put two of the big names that they were talking about is also Kik and also Telegram. Telegram, very, very well-known company, are doing a lot of business and making a lot of money in their already operating system, but they obviously want to jump into this whole cryptocurrency space. So that's being scrutinized as well. Opporty's founder, Sergey, penned a blog post in response to the SEC's lawsuit against the company. The commissioner case targets Opporty, International and Clever Solutions Incorporated, both of which are owned by Sergey, and the $600,000 that was raised by ICO. So by no means is it like some of the ICOs like EOS that were out there that raised huge sums.
Billions.
Billions. They've raised a large sum, which is obviously 600,000, but it's not quite to the tune of what we've seen with EOS and the rest of it. Now, something we've obviously been very well quoted on is about the way that we've spoken about this. We said that it was going to start with the big boys and it was going to start flowing down as it did happen. Now, obviously, a lot of these companies, we said before, are like a tin can with not much in them. I know there's an analogy that you speak about that. I don't know if you can just give that one across.
Yeah, so a little Coke can with all the branding on the outside, but no Coke on the inside, basically.
Yeah, it's just a cool looking thing on the shelf, but who knows whether there's actually something good inside that's really going to work.
And that's how the majority of these ICOs are operating at the moment. Pretty much a business with absolutely no one inside, just all the marketing power behind it. So it's just tricking people into a false promise. And then that's of course why we had the ICO craze back in the day, because all they were doing is taking Bitcoin's open source code, wrapping it in a complete different way, then raising multi-millions off the back of it. And now that we've had the price slump, it's forced a lot of these projects to pretty much fire their development teams because they can no longer afford to actually pay to sustain the business model.
If they're not got that money in the bank to self-fund the project from that point forward, there isn't a lot of things that they've got going for them.
Yeah, and the reasons why is because the majority of these people held their money in crypto. And of course, we know from 2017 up until pretty much this point, it hasn't been the best space to be in terms of actual price points with all of these other ICOs. So it's very important on where you're positioning yourself within this market space, because all of these ICOs are not going to be here within the next 12 months.
No, I completely agree. And I think that just leads nicely on to the rest of this article, which is as far as the SEC's assertion of Sergey took money, that Clever Solution was given $147,000 from the sale. The founder asserts that this couldn't be further from the truth. He explains that he didn't receive $13,600 that the SEC thinks he actually did, and that has been using personal funds and Clever resources to continue development since Opporty has run out of money in fall of 2018. So this is a long time ago they ran out of money. It's going to be a case where if they're fighting the SEC obviously over these issues as well, things aren't looking very good for them whatsoever. And like I said before, there are some good projects out there. They should have really understood what they were getting involved in when they went ahead and obviously went around this whole ICO phase. And they just weren't, looking at the actual facts that were out there. And this is something that we knew was coming for a long time. However, so many companies jumped down that whole ICO route, sold to, for example, US investors, which obviously, is a no-no when it comes to the SEC if they are going to deem it as a security, which they have now done. There were too many unknowns out there, and they were taking large amounts of private investors' funds without really knowing exactly what was going to play out from that point. So I think that, again, guys, if you have been involved in projects or ICOs that, raised a huge amount of money, I think now's time to sort of be looking and scrutinizing what's going on with that project. Is there stuff happening with the regulators where it might get sort of clamped down on a bit or shut down completely? This is kind of fair warning to go out there and make sure that you do research and ensure that the project that you're working with is going to, stand the longevity and be there for the future.
A lot of these other projects are pretty much just trying to reinvent the wheel, as opposed to actually focusing on building the rest of the car and using the foundations that BSV, the original version, the original technology, the original protocol of what Bitcoin really is, and building on top of that foundation. And with these regulators, they're not going in and saying, okay, we're going to charge you on current market price of what the currency is currently worth. They're charging them on what they raised at that particular point.
And rightly so. I mean, it's 100%. One of these things with those investors, they put in that amount of money. They expected, obviously, some sort of return that they were going to get from it, hence why you're making an investment in the first place. And I think the SEC is obviously just one domino. The other domino that's going to get these guys is nChain and what they've been doing in terms of their patent fortress. If we're looking at this, a lot of these projects are running off the exact same technology which was created through Craig Wright's side of things, in our personal opinion anyway. And with that view, if they are using that technology, such as blockchain, such as private keys, public keys, a lot of that stuff is going to come under scrutiny as well, because Craig has got a lot of it patented now. I think things are going to be interesting to say the least. But I think that covers really what I wanted to say quite nicely. And we can jump into what you were going to say around BSV. And
I think that perfectly transitions into what it is that my article is, because let's just talk about Craig for a little second. You got the entire community, or the entire cryptocurrency community, scrutinizing Craig as a person. And whether he is actually Satoshi, whether he isn't, whether he actually has the keys, whether he can move the original coins about, etc., etc., etc. But that is so beyond the point. It has nothing to do with that, because all they're focusing on is building the technology. So whilst you've got a lot of these negative actors within the cryptocurrency space focusing and trying to attack Craig, which is a perfect strategy from his part, because he's allowing them to attack him as a person, whilst he's there building the fortress that he's currently building, the patent fortress that we just mentioned, and not just that, the technology. Now it's to the point where whether he is or whether he isn't is completely irrelevant. That doesn't excel the project. That doesn't de-escalate the project. They're just doing all the work that they need to. And they currently have a product that is working and that can actually facilitate everything that it needs to facilitate moving forwards for us to properly grow out this cryptocurrency space to what it was originally envisioned to be. And that is a central database.
Imagine how scary that must be for people that are, developing on the Bitcoin core side, or, for example, on the BCH network. I know BCH has been hilarious in terms of what's been happening with that. But imagine how that must feel. Like looking at it, they've been talking about these solutions, these like bolt-ons, like Lightning and all the rest of it. And then there's this different one, Liquid, and then there's all these different things that are bouncing out there. But what has truly happened since, 2017 when we saw that height? In my opinion, absolutely nothing. There's been a lot of ideas about, but nothing really that came up with a proper solution. And why obviously all these people were attacking Craig Wright for the BCH side of things firstly, and now the BSV side of things. He, as you said, was marching forward. And while he was marching forward, he created a great big team behind him of some of the most skilled developers and skilled lawyers and patent side of things as well as he possibly could. And that really has shown that he was playing the right play the whole way through. So let's just see how this one plays out as well. I'm excited personally.
Proof of work.
Yeah.
So of course my news is it is around nChain and a lot of the development work that has been going on, and a lot of the development work that has been going on internally within BSV, because of course we're coming up to the Genesis upgrade that takes place on the 4th of February.
Exciting times.
100%. And what that quite simply means is limitations on the block size get removed, and it pretty much turns to miner's choice. Now, they've been running the testnet, and we've brought this up in a couple of the episodes in the past. Now, the testnet, it recorded a 1 gigabyte plus BSV testnet block, which included in that a huge amount of transactions. I'll just read the first paragraph out of this article. To think just a couple of years ago, people were debating whether the Bitcoin blockchain could handle transaction blocks of 2 megabytes or more.
I remember that well.
Yeah. that's a long time away now.
Yeah.
Now, on January the 27th, the BSV scaling testnet proved it's capable of something far greater, mining a block just over 1 gigabyte. Block 14893 contained 5,449,866 transactions. Listen properly. The most number of individual transactions in a block. So a huge amount of transactions. Now, of course, those transactions are testnet transactions, and it could be multiple different forms of transactions. It's not just me sending money. It's everything from micropayments to me building a platform on top of BSV, and then, of course, all the companies' interactions, so likes on the post, for example, all report back to transactions. That's why we need such a large block size so that we can handle all the scale that this industry effectively needs.
Yeah. So it's not just obviously talking about that kind of MasterCard and Visa level as just acting as an A to B payment process. So it's so much more, isn't it? And we're going to need to have huge amounts of capacity to be able to deal with that. And that's exciting to see that they're knocking on that door.
Yeah. And now I'm not going to jump too much between different currencies, but if we look at BTC, for example, they have actually changed on the website what BTC really is. They're basically saying it's a digital gold. So it's not meant to be doing many transactions. The fees are going to be exceptionally high when you do want to do transactions. And for me, especially when the halving actually takes place, that will hold no value whatsoever, because of course you're not incentivizing the miners to actually work on the actual chain itself and provide it with the hash power that it needs to process these transactions.
Completely
because they're not going to be receiving the fees that they need to be receiving. And once the block halving actually happens, then instantly their revenue cuts in half if the price of BTC currently stays static. And we know right now that they're pretty much on the breadline.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's a nice time to ask the listeners to chime in on this one as well. If you are out there and you've got an opinion on what we're saying in relation to obviously this whole block size situation, which is happening with Bitcoin Core, the way that they're obviously looking to obviously increase their capacity, what their plans could potentially be going forward versus what BSV are doing at the moment. I'm not going to bother saying BCH because I don't find it that interesting at the moment in terms of what they're doing. There just seems to be a lot of arguing going on between what's happening with development. So let's focus on these two at the moment. And yeah, guys, if you've got an interesting comment to put to that, or you want to ask us a question, we'd love to hear from you, and that'd be fantastic from that side.
Yeah, and that transitions perfectly into the next paragraph. So additionally, the block produced 10.736 testnet BSV in transaction fees, which would translate into $2,882 in real BSV at the current price. To put that into perspective, the current block reward itself is 12.5 coins. That will be half to 6.25 coins around the middle of 2020. Again, so what they're quite simply stating is the fact that they're doing sheer transaction volumes with cheap fees attached to it. They're generating enough to basically fill the void for when the halving event takes place. Now, of course, we already spoke about BTC. Now, of course, I know you said you didn't want to talk about BCH.
Oh, you bring them up? Great.
Yeah, let's have a look.
No, I'm only joking. I haven't actually got a vendetta against BCH people. It's just a case of that I've just found frustrating articles coming out recently which basically say a lot but nothing at all, to be honest. So that's my anger there.
Now, BCH. So, of course, at the moment, miners across the board are pretty much at their weakest, because majority of them are currently just pretty much operating at their breadline break-even point. Now, so miners are right now at their weakest. then they've got to facilitate the halving event that actually takes place. So they're going to need to receive value elsewhere. So whether that is through the method of transaction fees, or whether that's through the method of actually increasing the transaction fee applied to each individual transaction, there's many different methods, but very few of those methods work. Yep. And we believe transaction volume with cheap fees incentivizes everyone. It's perfect token economics, basically. Now, BCH, right now, they're trying to impose a miner tax. So they're trying to tax the miners to help fund the development that is currently happening on BCH. Right now, miners are at their weakest point, and now you're trying to tax the people that are providing you the horsepower to do whatever it is that you want to do. It's just the complete wrong strategy. It makes no sense whatsoever. And a lot of people within this space believe that they can build these cryptocurrency projects, but they just don't understand token economics and all the moving parts that you really need to take into account.
Taking it back further than that, they don't even understand the art of a good deal. Two people are sitting on either side, right? Yeah. One person, if they're walking away going, that is absolutely fantastic, and the other person's going away going, oh no, what happened, right? Yeah. That's not a good deal, right? Because somebody's losing out, right? Yeah. What you want in a good deal that incentivizes, and that's the key word here, is incentivizing, right? Both parties to do what we need them to do. We need developers, we need miners, right? Yeah. That's something that the space does need. The only way that you go about doing that is by making that an even share between the two. So in essence, not saying to people, I know, go out there, put your electricity costs up massively to run these miners to ensure that you're adding computational power to the network, all the rest of it. Do all this stuff, which is personal investments from you. Yeah. And not only that, even in this risky time, as you said, we're now going to add a tax onto the top of it. At this point, they're going, hang on a minute, my S9 miner or whatever miner they're using is mining SHA-256 algorithm. It actually can mine a whole bunch of other coins. I know we were talking about maybe 50 plus, but actually the ones that really matter to us at the moment in terms of the big ones that we're talking about is just Bitcoin and BSV at the moment, right? Yeah. Bitcoin's losing its incentive, right? So why turn around and say, okay, it makes sense to do it that way? That is madness, absolute madness.
Yep.
That's not the art of a good deal. It's stupid.
The halving is definitely going to expose all of this. Yeah. It won't happen instantly because, of course, BCH goes through the halving first, then it is BSV, and then Bitcoin is last.
That is going to be an interesting point, though, that the way that obviously goes. And that's all due to the fact of how the difficulty adjusted and certain chains started racing ahead. Yeah. But that's going to be something that's interesting for BSV when, for example, that point, and you may disagree with this, but when this does happen, right, in my opinion, there's going to be a long period of time where actually Bitcoin's still sitting at a higher level at that 12.5, which is going to make it more incentivized for miners to go ahead and do that, right? Yeah. So things might get a little bit, turbulent throughout that period, which I certainly think is going to happen, in my opinion.
And I completely agree. And so what I see happening is pretty much a lot of the hashing power just moving to wherever is profitable at that particular time. But of course, it's only for a small period of time. Yep. So we can see quite a lot of hashing power go from BCH and go from BSV over to Bitcoin just to get the 12.5 block reward. But then once that's said and done, I just can't see how BTC or BCH survive. Yeah, I really can't.
Whether you're buying a house or a cup of coffee, why would you pay more to transact than you need to? And why would you take longer than you need to? Simply doesn't make sense. And I think actually that's a really nice spot to wrap this episode up. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you are enjoying the content that's coming out of Bitstocks TV at the moment, please hit that like, subscribe and notification button so you can always see the latest and greatest coming from us. And also, if you prefer to listen to us, we're on Spotify and iTunes. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.